if you're obsessed with somebody who doesn't love you or you can't be with, if you don't know how to change your life, you can really connect to this film. Hey everybody, my name is Nick. I'm a director and editor, and today I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite directors, Wang Kar Wai, and I'm going to be ranking all of his films in a tier list. First, to discuss a little bit about the hallmarks of what is a Wang Kar Wai film. I think Wang Kar Wai is very obviously an auteur director. He is very unique, and when you watch one of his films, there are a lot of things that stick out, more so than many directors. If you know Wang Kar Wai, I think they stand out really clearly. You see a film, you know, like, oh, that's a Wang Kar Wai film. The romanticism of sadness and loneliness, these wandering soul characters, obviously the step printing technique that he uses, which is kind of this jerky, slowed down thing that he does in a lot of his films. A wandering camera that's kind of constantly moving, changing frame, but also being very meticulous and having very well framed and beautiful shots, but just moving constantly. And that is one of the reasons why Wang Kar Wai is so revered by kind of like film lovers. I think he is the film bro director because of the fact that his cinematography is so interesting and unique and feels so fluid while being very beautiful. So it feels like you can just pick up a camera and kind of point it around and you can emulate Wang Kar Wai. And a lot of people do that poorly, but Wang Kar Wai does it in such a way that it is beautiful. So I don't think he is, as we say in Chinese, 随便. I don't think that he is. I think that he is very meticulous. Another thing that he does throughout a lot of his works is kind of the use of this kind of very sappy pop music, and he uses it non-ironically. He's not doing what something like Tarantino would do, where he's contrasting the music and like giving you a pop song and then showing violence. He's giving you a pop song and having somebody be lonely. Like, it's the meaning of the pop song connected to the emotion very clearly, but he does it in such a way that it feels cool and fun. I suppose the contrast comes with it being primarily like American music contrasted with these images of Asia and Hong Kong. So that's kind of how it feels like really cool. But something that I really like about Wang Kar Wai is that he seems to be very earnest. He is giving you emotions that should be sappy. And I suppose some people consider Wang Kar Wai sappy, but he feels like he's very cool. People consider his films to be very cool. Cool people, filmmakers like his work. They point to it as something like that. And I really like that because it's telling us that you can be earnest, you can have these strong emotions and still be cool. So let's get right into it. I'm not going to recap too much about the plots because I think plots in Wang Kar Wai's films, as you may know, are not super important. They're not the point of the film. I think he is kind of a director, as we say, that is all about the vibe. Or to put it a little bit deeper and not in the slang of the time, he is experiential rather than plot heavy. So the first film that he made was called As Tears Go By. It stars great actor Andy Lau. He plays a gangster whose cousin, Maggie Cheung, also a great actor, comes to visit, and they develop feelings. A little odd, cousins developing feelings for each other. Personally, I avoided this film because I assumed that it would be kind of just like a low-budget version of Wang Kar Wai's other work, and I didn't really want to watch that. I didn't really want to ruin the illusion of him. But I actually thought that this film was very interesting to watch because it is much more of a traditional Hong Kong gangster film than a Wang Kar Wai film. So I think it's a great film for people to watch to kind of see how, as a director, you could start in a given genre that's established and then slowly develop your own ideas, your own techniques within that, and then become a completely different filmmaker, making things that are thematically completely different from the genre that you started in. He does something in this film. He does a step-printed fight scene in his gangster film, and it's super cool, and it is very uniquely Wang Kar Wai, but it also fits within the genre that he's doing. I would definitely say this film is a must-watch for any aspiring filmmaker because, as I said, it's a great lesson in how to adapt. You know, starting within a traditional structure, developing your own unique style from that. I would give this film a C because if you really want to see truly unique ways that Wang Kar Wai has influenced film, this is not really the movie to do it, but it is a great movie to watch. If you have seen every Wang Kar Wai movie, or if you're like a cinema lover that wants to see how a director develops. So I think it's a solid like middle tier, but it's definitely not the movie that I would start with to watch Wong Kar-wai. His second film, Days of Being Wild, is really when his unique style starts to develop. It stars Leslie Chung, who is like this playboy who finds out that his mother adopted him. And so he himself has this series of toxic, self-destructive relationships. Maggie Chung comes back in this film, and she's one of his relationships, and she is involved in this very famous sequence where he looks at her clock and tells her that they're going to be friends for 1 minute, and we sit and watch them stare at a clock. It's very romantic. It's one of the unique scenes that people always point to when they talk about Wong Kar-wai. This is where Wong Kar-wai became himself, I think, in this movie. There's like this meandering, flowing storyline where the plot is there. There's definitely a plot to this movie, but the plot is not as important as the feelings and the emotions that these characters are feeling. That's what's important, and that's what he does so well, is that he films situations, but he's really filming character. And he allows his actors to be very expressive and interesting just in kind of mundane things that they do where they're sitting around in an apartment. I think it's something that other directors and people who try to copy Wong Kar-wai cannot quite replicate. They're not as good at getting deep into these characters through these little actions, through the places that they're in and how they interact with their locations in a way that shows their emotion. And it's this artful directing of these fantastic actors that he has that makes him so unique. And he does that through really great cinematography that you can see really pop out within this film. I think as a mature man watching this movie now, I watched it in my 20s and I rewatched it again. I think the character of Leslie Chung definitely stuck out to me as being very toxic when I watched it now. And that dynamic made this film a lot deeper to me, because the kind of idea of a toxic person who is also kind of hurting himself, kind of mismanaging relationships and then spreading that pain out became a lot clearer to me now. So I think that's an interesting thing to watch. I think as a younger person, you could watch this and maybe think that that character was like cool somehow. But I mean, if you watch it and you have a little bit of emotional maturity and have had romantic relationships, you understand kind of more what's going on in the relationship between these people. I think this is a great film, but I put it as a B because Wong Kar-wai will continue to perfect his style and create even better work than this. But this is a very solid movie. The next film, Chungking Express. Now this I put as an S tier movie because I am a very basic film bro dude, and I mean this is a classic, great film. It's vignettes of lovers and people and missed connections in Hong Kong, standard Wong Kar-wai. This is like essential Wong Kar-wai. It's in his location of Hong Kong. It involves a lot of the actors that he likes to reuse, and it's using his signature style and filming techniques. I mean, this movie has been in a way like imitated a lot and kind of destroyed a little bit by the people who like it so much, because it's almost overly copied, overly discussed, overly brought up as being such a great work. But you cannot deny the brilliance of this movie. I think he achieves things in Chungking Express that shouldn't work. You know, you have these angsty characters who are stuck and stagnant, kind of in a single emotion throughout the entire film. The plot is very fragmented and not really about big moments of change, hyper stylized to the point of making everything kind of frozen in time throughout it, and we're kind of watching these people that can't get out of a rut. And that shouldn't work cinematically. Like everything you learn about how to make a movie is like characters need to have development, they need to change. And they do at the end of the film. So that's, I think, what ends up making the film work, is that we're stuck watching them struggle through this rut and we're really hoping that they can get out of it. And in the end, they kind of change their life. And so that's what ends up making the film work. But I think the other thing that makes the film work is that the emotions of the film are so strong and they feel so real that when you watch it, you can connect to when you were feeling stagnant like that, because it's a feeling that everybody has had. If you're obsessed with somebody who doesn't love you or you can't be with, if you don't know how to change your life, you can really connect to this film. What he also does to elevate the film is that he makes it feel really cool, because we're in this cool location of Hong Kong. We have these interesting actors that are just like so unique, and I'll say it one more time, they're cool people. And he also brings up this interesting theme of like how we kind of get attached to our loneliness and we don't want to leave our loneliness behind. And the idea of changing and getting out of this rut or this toxic relationship or this place that we're stuck in is like sad to us, which is a very human emotion that I think people don't discuss or explore as well as him. So this is a fantastic film. It's a kind of basic film bro pick, but is a must watch, so obviously Chungking Express has to be S tier. Next film that he did was Ashes of Time. So this is 5 stories of characters in ancient China. I think Wong Kar-wai creates locations as characters. The problem with this film is that the location is kind of amorphous. You don't really know where it is. So he's not creating a character within his location in this film. It's kind of like the desert randomly. There's no connection to space. I think Wong Kar-wai is very good at traveling through time, but he needs to be grounded in a location, I think. And this movie doesn't feel like it's doing that. I mean, I'm not sure what other elements he could have added to this movie to really ground it more, but it's just kind of feels really meandering. Like, he has a lot of the things about like the flowing storyline, but it's just a really confusing. Maybe if the plot was a little bit simpler like he does in his other works where it's just about characters interacting, it would work better. But because it's trying to connect to like these ancient complex Chinese stories, as we watch it, we're kind of trying to figure out what's happening. But as Wong Kar-wai films go, that's not really important to him as a director. He doesn't care to tell us too much what's happening. He wants to deal in emotions only. But for this film, this period piece set in ancient China that's kind of supposed to be a historical epic, that doesn't really work. Like, I personally would want historical context in my historical epic. So for me, this film ranks really low. I give it a D. It was super hard to watch. I honestly can't really think if I even finished it because I watched it in like sections because I had to keep pausing it and like restarting it just to get through it. Like, this film to me is not great. And there's a reason that it's not really re-shown or rescreened that often. So his next film, Fallen Angels, this is a very interesting work because it was originally supposed to be part of Chungking Express, but it got too long. So he ended up splitting Chungking Express into Chungking Express and this movie, Fallen Angels, which is a little bit darker, a little bit more humorous, like a dark comedy in a way. This, for me, is also fantastic. I mean, it's back to Wong Kar-wai's Hong Kong location where Hong Kong becomes a central character in his film. One of the main plot lines in it is this hitman and this female broker that's in love with him. Again, this is like kind of like a cliched like film bro movie, cool movie thing from the 90s, but this movie is just so good. It's so stylized, so cool, visually very unique, focused on the kind of stream, like the lights of Hong Kong. I mean, it's great to watch. It's super fun. And the thing that I love about it is that typically Wong Kar-wai is extremely self-serious, extremely brooding, working in these kind of very serious emotions. But this film is more focused on comedy, and it shows that Wong Kar-wai as a director can execute comedy really well. There's some amazing scenes where like a guy is like force feeding someone, he's deaf and he can't hear, and so he's like force feeding this family ice cream, and it's just like super weird, but it's really fun and funny. And so I give this film, I give this film S tier again. I think that Fallen Angels is great. It's one of my other favorite Wong Kar-wai films, and I don't really care what you think. Happy Together. This is about a gay couple from Hong Kong that moved to Argentina and then suffered relationship struggles and how it breaks up, get back together, and it's kind of, they're stuck in this toxic relationship as this theme that Wong Kar-wai likes to discuss, where they can't seem to leave each other, but they can't really be together because they're bad for each other. I mean, this is another one of my favorite movies. In my opinion, as a straight man, it's one of the best LGBT movies because it shows a complex relationship between two men that feels very real because it's very flawed and very human. He does what he would with a heterosexual relationship for this relationship, and in doing that, if you are a straight person, you kind of can see like, oh, all relationships are the same. Like, it works on 2 levels because it's talking about how love isn't perfect, but then it's also showing you that love is the same across all kinds of people. Everybody comes into these struggles of love. It's a kind of universal idea. I mean, it's such a great, heartbreaking depiction about how two people who aren't right for each other but are trying really hard to make it work can kind of hurt each other in the end. And I think that that's great to do, and it really humanizes these two characters in such an interesting way. It's also filmed very erotically, I will say. Like, there's a lot of explicit, overt sexual stuff in it, which is, you know, as you watch it, you kind of, whether or not you are sexually attracted to the people on the screen, you can recognize how sexy this movie is. I'll say that. Again, he utilizes music in a really cool way in this film. He uses this like Latin music from the 50s that I think kind of breaks a little bit out of his kind of obsession with American pop music. That makes it pretty cool. Like, I like that he's using a kind of different spin on his obsession with this kind of schmaltzy, a little bit corny music. It makes it feel a little bit less corny, I guess, for me, because it's like Latin music. So I love this movie. I wanted to give it an S tier, but I feel like I'm giving too many of his movies S tier, so I'm gonna pop it in the A category just to kind of mix it up a little bit. But I think this easily could be S. We could flip this in Fallen Angels depending on what you like, but I'm gonna put it as an A. All right, next movie is In the Mood for Love. This movie is maybe the most well-known Wong Kar-wai movie. This is kind of the one that everybody watches first, I find. And it's probably the one I would recommend most people to watch first. This is a movie about unrequited love between two spouses. They're married to separate people, and those spouses are cheating on them. So these two people who are getting cheated on, they meet each other and they develop this relationship that never really goes sexual, that never really becomes a sexual relationship, but it's very like romantically strong and feels very powerful. So I had a friend who said that everyone goes through like a Led Zeppelin phase in music where they're obsessed with Led Zeppelin. And I think every film nerd goes through In the Mood for Love phase where they're obsessed with this movie. It is a very good movie, and it touches on a very relatable emotional state that I think is specific to a time in your life. And so when you're in that time in your life where you're like lonely and kind of obsessed with love, and you also feel a little bit like something's wrong with you and that people don't love you or something, I think everybody goes through that. This is the movie that a lot of people who love cinema gravitate towards because it's done in such a great way. It's emotionally very strong, visually very strong. Like I mentioned, it has Wong Kar-wai's kind of experiential overplot kind of thing, so you can just watch it and feel feelings when you watch this. And I think that actually this is the movie that is the most emotionally resonant. Like, you watch it and you connect to very specific feelings in your body and your core when you watch it. It's very, very romanticized, and like I said, it kind of delves a little far into corniness. So it's something that I personally kind of grew out of. It's not like a movie that I would kind of rewatch now, especially at this stage in my life. So for that reason, I'm giving it an A tier, even though it is kind of quintessential Wong Kar-wai and maybe the first movie I would recommend people to watch. Next, he made 2046, which is a follow-up to In the Mood for Love, and actually, supposedly, Days of Being Wild and In the Mood for Love and 2046 are all kind of part of a trilogy, although I kind of reject that idea because they're not really connected. But, you know, if you want to say they're a trilogy, then they're a trilogy. 2046, though, I think is very connected to In the Mood for Love. It's kind of basically an extension of the film, kind of like how Fallen Angels was an extension of Chungking Express. It's kind of in the same universe, except it adds this interesting sci-fi element to it where it spans across time and goes into the future. This is actually the first Wong Kar-wai movie that I saw, and I didn't understand it at all, but I loved it. I think it's aesthetically very amazing. I love this idea of this like retro sci-fi 60s, 50s kind of thing that they're doing. The mood kind of carries over, and I think the ideas that are explored in it about memory and about loneliness and about being kind of trapped in memory and relating that to these sci-fi things is really cool and unique. Although the plot is very confusing. In the style of Wong Kar-wai, it's kind of hard to know what's going on within this, but it's again, he adds this added element of like spanning across time and this sci-fi stuff that makes it like doubly confusing. He's already a person and a director, I think, that doesn't care too much about overly explaining his plot. So when his plot gets out of the very simple thing of characters interacting with each other, it can get really confusing really fast, especially with his filming style. So it's a movie that I personally found hard to follow when I watched it as a young man, and I still find it a little hard to follow, but I think it's great. You don't need to follow it, if that makes sense. You just kind of feel it, man. So yeah, it's more about the experience. And I think this movie's great, although the confusing things knock a point off to me, so I'm going to put this movie as a B tier movie. The next film of Wong Kar Wai is called My Blueberry Nights. So this is the only Wong Kar Wai movie that I absolutely hate. I think this movie is horrible. And the reason being that this is the movie that Wong Kar Wai filmed in America, with an American studio, with American actors, and it does not work. Wong Kar Wai needs to be with actors that he understands and is comfortable with. You know, his Hong Kong actors, his Chinese actors, his Taiwanese actors. He needs them. He cannot operate with these Hollywood actors. It just doesn't work. This movie is so bizarre. It sucks. It's horrible. It's like if a film student tried to make a Wong Kar Wai movie in America. It feels stripped of meaning when it's put in this context. And you put this Hollywood corporate casting in his work, and it just feels very fake and just kind of everything that's wrong with how people take IP and try to capitalize on it. Like, it's like a Hollywood thinks, oh, this guy's popular, let's like make our version of it, let's get him to do it in America with our actors, and people will love it. But it doesn't work, because I think Wong Kar Wai is so rooted in Asian cinema. He is quintessentially part of that movement. When you take him out of it, his aesthetic doesn't make sense anymore. I mean, he's obviously can operate outside of Hong Kong. He did it in Happy Together, but he is grounded with his characters who are from Asia, you know, and he has elements of Taiwan in there with a character that comes from Taiwan. He has elements of Hong Kong with his characters that come from Hong Kong or living in Latin America and how they're dealing with it culturally. They're speaking Chinese. It works, but this with freaking Jude Law and who is Natalie Portman in it, it's so weird. I just hate this movie so much. I think John Woo works in America because he works in genre movies. So if you take John Woo out of the context of Asian cinema and you put him in America with a big Hollywood budget, he's grounded in his genre and he's able to elevate his genre, his action genre, with all of the money and the excess of Hollywood, and it makes it super cool, like with the movie Face Off. But Wong Kar Wai doesn't need any of that. You know, he doesn't need the big budget. He doesn't need the Hollywood A-list actor. He operated so well in his space and developed his style in the Asian cinema space that when you take him out and you give him these A-list actors, it doesn't feel authentic anymore. And it's kind of, I just think it's kind of a sacrilege to what he is as a director. I hate this movie. I think it shouldn't exist. I would be for all copies of this movie being deleted from the world. All right, so yeah, that's the movie of his that I don't like. And his final film, The Grandmaster, is another attempt by Wong Kar Wai to make a more historical epic. It's his version of Ip Man, and I kind of love that there is a full-on kung fu version of Ip Man, and then there is Wong Kar Wai version of Ip Man. That is actually not about Ip Man. It's about this female martial artist that was actually better than Ip Man, and he was in love with her, and it's about their kind of love story. It's just like super quintessential Wong Kar Wai to take this thing of like, yeah, I'll make a martial arts movie, and then he makes it a love story. I think this film really shows that he knows what his strengths are. He knows that he doesn't really want to make a kung fu movie. He wants to make a romance. So that part of it is great to watch. I think there's a lot of cool moments in this film. There's an interesting kind of backstory to this film where supposedly the producer Harvey Weinstein got the cut for America and like re-edited it because he was mad or something. It's really weird. I don't quite understand it. So there's like a bunch of different versions of this movie, and one of them supposedly was like spitefully cut down by Harvey Weinstein because he didn't want it to be good for some reason, because I guess he's famous for like ruining films that he like doesn't have enough of a stake in because he has such a strong ego and he's such a piece of crap. I don't know. I mean, I don't really know the validity of that, and I don't really actually know what version I saw, but I liked the version that I saw. I thought the scenes were really cool. And I think it's interesting that as a director who's known for being very slow and methodical, he's able to take that and edit action so well. I mean, you saw it in As Tears Go By, his first film, and now this film, you can see that he can edit a fight sequence pretty well. Like, he can put together a cool fight sequence. The fight sequence on the train is fun to watch. It works as a kung fu sequence. It's fun. And so I give this down the middle again. I give this a C. It's a good movie. I liked it, but it's kind of weird because there's a bunch of different versions of it. So it's hard to know which one you're watching. So I would say watch it later on after you kind of get the sense of what Wong Kar-wai is as a director. All right, so that's my rankings of all of his work. I think that Wong Kar-wai, like David Lynch, is one of the best and the worst directors for a young film lover to watch, because I think as a director, his works are a really quick and easy way to expand your understanding of what you can do with film. You know, you can watch a Wong Kar-wai film or a David Lynch film and you can easily see like, oh wow, there's a lot of possibilities that work outside of traditional storytelling. And there's a lot of cool things you can do with cinema. The danger is that as a young director or as somebody who's really in love with film, trying to copy him is a mistake, because you can't do what Wong Kar-wai can do. You can't do what David Lynch can do. And I think a lot of people fall into that trap of like, oh, I like Wong Kar-wai, I want to make a movie like Wong Kar-wai. I think the point of watching a director like him isn't to try to emulate his specific techniques and styles. It's to watch his work and understand, oh, there's a multitude of different things I can do. And I can create my own style and create my own type of cinema, which is what Wong Kar-wai did. And I can create something that's rooted in my culture and my experience and the feelings that I have. So I think that that would be the message that I would give to a young filmmaker watching Wong Kar-wai, is that watch it with the understanding that you don't want to copy his specific techniques. You want to copy his approach to filmmaking. So that's how I feel, and let me know what you think in the comments below. What's your favorite Wong Kar-wai movie? Did I rank them in a bad way? Do you think that something I put, do you love My Blueberry Nights? Do you hate Chungking Express? Let me know, and I'll talk to you guys next time.